The old Valkyrie historian sat in his study, surrounded by data tablets and holographic records that stretched back 300 years. His name was Torvax, and he had spent his entire life studying one species. The species that changed everything, the species that finally broke. He began to write. "If you want to understand what happened to the galaxy," he wrote, "you must first understand what humanity was, and what we did to them." 300 years ago, humans made first contact with the galaxy. They were young then, eager, full of hope and wonder at the universe that opened before them. The galactic concord welcomed them, as it welcomed all new species. But from the very beginning, humans were different. They did not complain. When the concord assigned them the most dangerous colony worlds, the ones no other species wanted, humans said thank you and got to work. When pirates raided their trade ships, humans rebuilt and tried again. When other species looked down on them, called them primitive, treated them like servants, humans simply smiled and kept working. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Within 50 years, humans became the backbone of galactic civilization. They settled the harsh worlds. They responded to every disaster. They mediated every conflict. They built and healed and served and never once asked for anything in return. Other species marveled at this. The Kreth Dominion called humans useful animals. The Sorenthi Empire used human soldiers as shields in their wars. The Malaxi Consortium hired human workers for half the pay of any other species, and humans accepted all of it. "They are simply built for suffering," the scholar said. "They do not feel pain like we do. They do not understand dignity. They are content to serve." This was a lie, but it was a comfortable lie, so the galaxy believed it. Captain Alara Vance knew the truth. She stood on the bridge of the HSV Perseverance, watching the stars drift past her view screen. She was 62 years old. She had served in the Human Relief Fleet for 40 years. In that time, she had saved millions of lives. Alien lives. She had pulled Valkyrie miners from collapsed tunnels. She had delivered food to starving Kreth colonies. She had evacuated Sorenthi cities from volcanic eruptions. Not once had any of them said thank you. Alara did not do this work for thanks. She did it because it was right. Because humans believed that if they just kept helping, kept sacrificing, kept proving their worth, the galaxy would eventually see them as equals. She still believed that. Most days. Her first officer, Commander David Chen, approached her with a data tablet. His face was pale. "Captain," he said, "you need to see this." Alara took the tablet. She read the message 3 times before she understood it. The Galactic Concord had voted that morning. A new threat had emerged from beyond the galaxy's edge. They called it the Hollow. It was a machine intelligence, vast and hungry, consuming everything in its path. The Hollow had already destroyed 2 systems. It was advancing fast. The Concord needed a buffer zone. They needed worlds to sacrifice to slow the Hollow down while they prepared their defenses. They had chosen 3 human colony worlds: New Brisbane, Artemis Station, Heaven's Landing. 18 million humans lived on those worlds. 18 million people who had built homes, raised families, created communities in the harshest corners of space. 18 million people who had done everything the Concord asked. The vote had passed unanimously. No human delegate had been invited. Alara read the names of the species who voted: Valkyrie, Kreth, Sorenthi, Malaxi, all of them. Every single species humanity had helped, had saved, had bled for. They had all voted yes. "When did they expect us to find out?" Alara asked. "The official announcement comes tomorrow," David said. "Someone leaked it early." "How kind of them." Alara handed the tablet back. She turned to the view screen. The stars looked the same as they always did, cold and distant and beautiful. For 300 years, humanity had told itself a story. The story said that the galaxy was simply young, simply ignorant, simply not ready to accept humans as equals. The story said that one day, if humans were patient enough, good enough, strong enough, things would change. Alara had believed that story her whole life. She did not believe it anymore. "Captain?" David asked. "What are your orders?" Alara was quiet for a long moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited. They had all read the message. They all knew what it meant. "Signal the fleet," Alara said. "Tell them to hold position." And our response to the Concorde? Ilara thought about the 18 million people on those three worlds. She thought about her grandmother, who had died in a mining accident on a colony world that no other species would touch. She thought about her father, who had served 30 years in the relief fleet and received nothing but a small pension and an early death from radiation exposure. She thought about 300 years of service, 300 years of patience, 300 years of believing that things would get better. Acknowledged, she said. David blinked. That's it? That's it. But Captain, we have to do something. We have to protest, appeal to the council, make them understand. Understand what? Ilara turned to face him. Her eyes were calm. Too calm. They understand perfectly, Commander. They understand that human lives are cheap. They understand that we will accept anything they do to us. They understand that we have no power, no voice, no value except what we can do for them. She paused. They understand us completely. We are the ones who did not understand. She walked toward her ready room. Captain, David called after her, what do we tell the fleet? What do we tell Earth? Ilara stopped at the door. She did not turn around. Tell them the truth, she said. Tell them the Conquered has made their position clear. Tell them that humanity has received the message. Tell them, she paused, tell them we are done talking. The door closed behind her. David stood on the bridge surrounded by silent officers. No one knew what to say. No one knew what would happen next. But something had changed. They could all feel it. Something that had held humanity together for 300 years. Some hope, some faith, some belief in the goodness of the galaxy had cracked. It had not broken yet, but it would. Across human space, the message spread. 18 million people were going to die so that alien worlds could live. 18 million people who had never hurt anyone, who had done everything right, who had believed in the promise of the Concorde. Humans read the message. They read the names of the species who voted. They remembered every sacrifice, every insult, every death that the galaxy had demanded of them. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity did not respond with acceptance. They responded with silence. The Concorde expected protests. They expected demands. They expected the usual human patience, the usual human forgiveness, the usual human willingness to accept whatever crumbs the galaxy offered. They received nothing. Human ships began returning to Sol. Human workers left their posts on alien stations. Human soldiers resigned their commissions in alien armies. Human diplomats packed their bags and went home. No one explained why. No one needed to. The galaxy had finally pushed humanity to the edge. And humanity had looked into the darkness beyond that edge and decided that falling might be better than continuing to stand. The breaking had begun. 6 months passed. The galaxy had expected human anger. They had prepared for protests, demonstrations, angry speeches at the Conquered Assembly. They had lawyers ready to explain why the vote was legal. They had diplomats ready to offer small comforts, meaningless apologies, empty promises of future consideration. They never got the chance to use any of it. Humanity simply stopped. At first, the galaxy celebrated. The Kreth ambassador laughed at a diplomatic dinner. Finally, he said, the humans are learning their place. They are sulking like children, but they will return when they get hungry. They always do. The other ambassadors agreed. Humans were useful, yes, but they were also predictable. They would complain for a while, then they would come back to work. They had no choice. The galaxy was too big, too dangerous, too complex for one species to survive alone. 3 weeks later, the Valkyrie mining station Koroth 7 suffered a reactor failure. It was a common problem. Koroth 7 was old, built in a time when safety was not a priority. The reactor had been failing slowly for years. Everyone knew that when it finally broke, they would call the humans. Humans always came. Humans always saved them. The station master sent the distress signal. He waited for the familiar sight of human ships dropping out of hyperspace, human engineers in their battered suits, human doctors with their strange, patient smiles. No one came. He sent the signal again, and again. For 3 days he sent signals while his people died around him. On the 4th day, he received a response. Your request has been received. Thank you for your patience. That was all. An automated message. No ships, no engineers, no help. 2,000 Velkari died on Coral 7. The Velkari government sent angry messages to Earth. They demanded explanations. They threatened consequences. They received the same automated response. Your request has been received. Thank you for your patience. The Kreth Dominion faced a different crisis. A blight was spreading through their agricultural worlds, killing crops, threatening billions with starvation. For a century, human xenobotanists had helped manage such problems. They understood alien ecosystems in ways that other species did not. They were the best in the galaxy at keeping things alive. The Kreth sent requests for assistance. They offered payment. They offered trade agreements. They offered things they had never offered before. The humans did not respond. The blight spread. 3 Kreth worlds lost their harvests. The Dominion began to ration food. Riots broke out in major cities. The Kreth blamed the humans, called them traitors, called them cowards. The humans said nothing. Along the trade routes, piracy surged. For decades, human patrol ships had kept the shipping lanes safe. They did it for free, asking nothing in return. Now those ships were gone. Pirates who had hidden in fear for years emerged from the darkness. They raided with abandon. Trade slowed, then stopped. Economies began to fail. The Serenthi Empire and the Malaxi Consortium had been rivals for centuries. Humans had always mediated their disputes, calming tensions, finding compromises, preventing wars. Without human diplomats, old hatreds returned. A Serenthi commander fired on a Malaxi merchant ship. The Malaxi retaliated. Within weeks, a full war had begun. Thousands died in the first month, tens of thousands in the second. No one came to make peace. The Galactic Concord held emergency session after emergency session. They sent delegations to Earth. The delegations were received politely, given comfortable quarters, and told to wait. They waited for weeks. No human official ever met with them. They sent messages demanding explanations. They sent messages offering negotiations. They sent messages threatening sanctions, embargoes, even military action. Every message received the same response. Your request has been received. Thank you for your patience. Inside human space, something else was happening. The few alien observers allowed to remain sent confused reports. Humans were not grieving. They were not angry. They were not preparing for war. They were simply working. Shipyards that had built relief vessels for centuries were changing. The gentle, unarmed ships designed for rescue and healing were being torn apart. New ships were rising in their place. Ships with weapons, ships with armor. Ships built not to save lives, but to end them. Factories that had produced medical supplies were now producing something else. Research stations that had studied alien diseases were now studying alien weaknesses. Training facilities that had taught rescue and first aid were now teaching combat and strategy. It was not frantic. It was not chaotic. It was calm, organized, and terrifying. A Velkari observer named Sarath managed to speak with a human worker at one of the shipyards. He asked what was happening. The human, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked at him for a long moment. "We spent 300 years building things to help you," she said. "Ships to save you, medicine to heal you, food to feed you, and you threw it all away. You threw us away." She turned back to her work. "Now we are building things for ourselves." "But what does that mean?" Sarath asked. "What are you going to do?" The woman did not answer. She did not need to. Sarath looked at the warship taking shape above him and understood. The Hollow continued to advance. The 3 human colony worlds fell exactly as the Concord had planned. 18 million humans died to buy the galaxy time. The Concord celebrated this sacrifice. They called it necessary. They called it noble. They did not call it murder, though that is what it was. The Hollow was not stopped. It was not even slowed. The machine intelligence consumed the 3 worlds and kept coming. The Concord's military tried to hold the line. They failed. The Hollow was simply too vast, too relentless, too patient. It did not negotiate. It did not threaten. It simply ate, system by system, world by world. The Concord needed help. They needed the one species in the galaxy that knew how to endure, how to hold the line, how to keep fighting when all hope was gone. They needed humanity. The High Council voted to formally request human military assistance. This time, they invited human delegates. This time, they offered partnership, respect, equality. This time, they were desperate. The response came not from the Human Diplomatic Corps. That organization no longer existed. The response came from a new office with a new name, United Human Strategic Command. The message was short. It contained no pleasantries, no diplomatic language, no expressions of goodwill. 3 words: state your terms. The Concord ambassadors stared at those words. They did not understand. For 300 years, humans had asked for nothing. They had accepted whatever the galaxy offered. They had been grateful for scraps. Now they were demanding terms. The Velkari ambassador sent back a confused response. "We are offering you the chance to help defend the galaxy. What terms could you possibly want?" The reply came quickly. "You misunderstand. We are not asking what you are offering. We are telling you to state what you are willing to give. Everything is on the table. Everything." The ambassador tried to explain that this was not how diplomacy worked. The humans did not respond. Across the galaxy, species that had spent centuries ignoring humanity suddenly realized they had a problem. The humans were not angry. Anger could be managed. The humans were not sad. Sadness would pass. The humans were cold. The humans were patient. The humans were waiting. And for the first time in 300 years, the galaxy was afraid of what humanity might do next. The emergency summit was held on Axis Prime, a neutral station built centuries ago for moments exactly like this. The Great Hall could hold thousands. Today it held the representatives of every species in the galactic Concord. They were all waiting for humanity. The Kreth ambassador shifted nervously in his seat. 6 months ago, he had laughed at the idea of human demands. He was not laughing now. His people were starving. His military was bleeding against the hollow. He needed human help, and he was beginning to understand what that help might cost. The doors opened. The human delegation entered the hall. There were only 12 of them. They wore simple black uniforms with no decoration, no medals, no signs of rank. They walked in perfect formation, their footsteps echoing in the silence. At their head was Admiral Yusuf Okonkwo. He was an old man, 73 years of age, with gray hair and dark skin, and eyes that had seen too much. He had spent 50 years in the Human Relief Fleet before transferring to Strategic Command. He had saved more alien lives than anyone in human history. Today, he was not here to save anyone. The human delegation took their seats at a table facing the assembly. Okonkwo did not greet the gathered ambassadors. He did not smile. He did not offer the usual diplomatic pleasantries. He simply began. 307 years ago, he said, humanity made first contact with the galactic Concord. We were welcomed as new members of a great civilization. We were promised equality, partnership, and respect. He touched a control on his tablet. A holographic display appeared above the table. "This is what we received instead." Numbers began to scroll across the display. Dates, names, incidents. 3 centuries of data, collected and organized with careful precision. Year 12 of contact. The colony ship Horizon lands on Kepler 442b as assigned by the Concord. The planet's atmosphere is toxic. The Concord knew this. They did not tell us. 4,000 colonists die in the first year. The display showed images. Humans in failing environmental suits. Children gasping for breath. Bodies buried in alien soil. Year 47. The Kreth Dominion requests human workers for their mining operations. Payment is set at 40% of standard rates. Humans accept because we have no choice. Over the next century, 16,000 humans die in Kreth mines. Exposed to radiation, crushed in collapses, worked to death. More images. More numbers. The Kreth ambassador tried to look away. He could not. Year 89, the Serenthi Empire goes to war with the Veth Collective. They request human soldiers. We send 50,000 volunteers. They use them as shields, as distractions, as acceptable losses. 32,000 humans die. The Serenthi win their war. They do not mention human sacrifice in their victory celebrations. The display continued, year after year, incident after incident. Human lives spent like currency by species who never bothered to learn their names. Year 156. A plague strikes the Malaxi homeworld. Human doctors work for 3 years to develop a cure. They succeed. The Malaxi Council thanks us by raising tariffs on human goods. They say we were too slow. Year 203. Pirates raid human shipping. We request Concord protection. We are told that human shipping is not a priority. We protect ourselves. We are told we are being aggressive. Year 267. The Valkyrie vote to reduce human representation in the Concord Assembly. They say we are too young, too primitive, too emotional to participate in galactic governance. The vote passes. We accept it. The display stopped. Year 307. The Concord votes to sacrifice 3 human worlds to the Hollow. 18 million humans. They do not ask us. They do not warn us. They do not even tell us until the decision is made. Okonkwo looked at the assembled ambassadors. In 300 years, humanity has lost 2 billion, 300 million lives serving this Concord. We have saved more lives than we have lost. We have built more than we have destroyed. We have given more than we have taken. He paused. We have received formal thanks 17 times. The silence in the hall was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. You believed our patience was weakness, Okonkwo continued. You believed our kindness was stupidity. You believed that because we did not fight back, we did not feel the wounds you gave us. He stood. You were wrong. The holographic display changed. Now it showed the Hollow, the vast machine intelligence consuming the galaxy. It showed Concord fleets burning. It showed worlds falling. It showed the future if nothing changed. The Hollow will reach the core systems in 18 months. Your military cannot stop it. Your technology cannot match it. Your species cannot endure the kind of war required to defeat it. He looked at each ambassador in turn. But we can. The Kreth ambassador stood. His voice was angry, desperate. Then help us. You have always helped us. This is what you do. Yes, Okonkwo said. It was what we did. It is not what we do any longer. Then what do you want? Name your price. Whatever it takes. Okonkwo smiled. It was not a kind smile. Full membership in the Concord Council, not observer status, not junior membership, full and equal voting rights. Murmurs from the assembly. This was unprecedented. New species waited centuries for such status. Reparations. The exact amount will be calculated based on the losses we have suffered. It will be substantial. The murmurs grew louder. A formal apology, not a diplomatic statement. A genuine acknowledgement of what was done to us, recorded and broadcast to every world in the Concord. The Sorrenthi ambassador rose. This is extortion. Yes, Okonkwo agreed. It is. You cannot be serious. You cannot expect us to surrender our dignity to a species of... Of what? Okonkwo's voice was soft, but it silenced the room. Please finish that sentence, Ambassador. Tell us exactly what you think we are. The Sorrenthi sat down. He did not finish the sentence. One final term, Okonkwo said. For the duration of the war against the Hollow, all military operations will be under human command. Not human suggestion, not human consultation. Human command, absolute and unquestioned. The hall erupted. Ambassadors shouted. Some screamed. The Kreth ambassador pounded his desk. The Malaxi representative actually fainted. Okonkwo waited until the noise died down. You have 72 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, humanity will withdraw to our own space. We will defend Seoul and our remaining colonies. We will not participate in the war against the Hollow. We will not provide aid, advice, or assistance of any kind. He gathered his delegation. The rest of the galaxy can negotiate with the Hollow directly. We wish you luck. He walked toward the door. Wait. The Valkyrie ambassador rose. You cannot do this. Billions will die if you abandon us. Does that mean nothing to you? Okonkwo stopped. He turned back. 18 million humans died on those 3 worlds. They had names. They had families. They had dreams and hopes and fears just like anyone else. And you sacrificed them without a second thought. His voice was calm, but something in it made the ambassador step back. Now you ask if billions mean something to us. Yes, Ambassador, they do. But you taught us something important. You taught us that our lives have value only when we demand it. You taught us that kindness is rewarded with contempt. You taught us that the only way to be respected is to be feared. He turned away. 72 hours, choose wisely. The humans left. The doors closed behind them. In the hall, the conquered ambassadors stared at each other. For 300 years, they had relied on human patience, human forgiveness, human willingness to accept whatever treatment the galaxy offered. That era was over. Now they had 72 hours to decide if they wanted to survive. The conquered accepted humanity's terms at hour 71. 14 species had voted to reject the demands. They believed humanity was bluffing. They had seen humans make threats before and always back down. They assumed this time would be no different. They were wrong. At hour 68, humanity began evacuating its remaining personnel from conquered space. Ships launched from stations across the galaxy, carrying human workers, doctors, engineers, and soldiers back to Sol. The message was clear. This was not a negotiation. The 14 species who voted no watched those ships leave. They saw their own stations begin to fail, their own workers struggle without human expertise, their own societies begin to crack. At hour 70, they changed their votes. The war began 3 days later. The galaxy had seen humans at peace. They had seen human patience, human kindness, human willingness to suffer without complaint. They had never seen humans at war. It terrified them. Admiral Okonkwo took command of the combined fleet. His first order was simple: no retreat. Under any circumstances, for any reason, the Concord officers were confused. Every military doctrine in the galaxy included retreat as a tactical option. Sometimes you had to fall back to survive. Sometimes the enemy was too strong. Humans did not believe this. The first major battle was at Corinth Station. The Hollow had sent a fleet of 12,000 ships to consume the system. The Concord had expected to delay them, to slow their advance, to buy time for the core worlds to prepare. Okonkwo ordered an attack. The human fleet punched through the Hollow formation like a spear through flesh. They did not stop. They did not hesitate. They did not concern themselves with losses. Ship after ship fell, but the survivors kept fighting, kept pushing, kept dying. The Hollow had never encountered anything like it. Machine intelligences were logical. They calculated odds. They withdrew when victory was uncertain. They did not understand an enemy that simply refused to stop. Corinth Station was saved. The human fleet lost 40% of its ships. Okonkwo called it a victory. The Kreth Dominion sent a protest. They said human tactics were wasteful, reckless, insane. They demanded more conservative strategies. They demanded the right to command their own forces. Okonkwo's response was brief. You demanded human help. You received human help. If you do not like how we fight, you may withdraw your forces from the coalition. The Kreth did not withdraw. They could not afford to. Over the following months, the war continued. The Hollow advanced and humanity pushed back. Every system they defended cost them dearly. Human casualties mounted into the millions. But they did not stop. They did not slow down. They did not ask for rest or relief or reinforcement. The same endurance that had let them suffer in silence for 3 centuries now drove them forward. Other species fought until they were tired, until the odds seemed bad, until continuing seemed pointless. Humans fought until they won or died. There was no third option. Captain Alara Vance led the assault on Hollow Nexus 7, one of the machine intelligence's primary coordination nodes. Intelligence suggested that destroying the Nexus would cripple Hollow operations in an entire sector. Intelligence also suggested that the Nexus was defended by 8,000 ships. Ilara had 3,000. She attacked anyway. The battle lasted 9 hours. Ilara lost ship after ship. Friends she had served with for decades died in fire and vacuum. Her own vessel took critical damage. Her bridge crew was cut in half. She did not stop. When the Nexus finally fell, Ilara had 600 ships left. She reported the victory to command in a voice that held no emotion. Nexus 7 destroyed, awaiting new orders. That was all. No grief, no celebration, no acknowledgement of what the victory had cost. The alien officers who witnessed the battle were shaken. They had always thought humans were soft, too emotional, too attached to their people. Now they understood the truth. Humans were not soft. They simply chose to be kind. They chose to care. They chose to feel. And when they chose to stop feeling, they became something else entirely. The Serenthi ambassador tried to negotiate a separate peace with the Hollow. He believed the machines could be reasoned with. He believed that if his people surrendered, they would be spared. Human intelligence discovered the negotiation. Admiral Okonkwo summoned the ambassador to his flagship. "You attempted to betray the coalition," Okonkwo said. His voice was calm. The ambassador was terrified. "I was trying to save my people. Surely you understand. The Hollow is too powerful. We cannot win." "We can win," Okonkwo said. "We will win. But you have proven that your species cannot be trusted. What are you going to do?" Okonkwo touched a control on his desk. A map appeared showing Serenthi space. "Your homeworld will be deprioritized for defense. Your fleets will be reassigned to the most dangerous fronts. If the Hollow attacks Serenthi Prime, we will respond according to our assessment of strategic value." The ambassador went pale. "You would let billions die because of one mistake? The Conquered let 18 million humans die because it was convenient." Okonkwo's eyes were cold. "Consider this a lesson in consequences. The Serenthi homeworld was not attacked. The Hollow never reached it. But for the rest of the war, Serenthi forces were sent to the worst battles, suffered the highest casualties, received the least support. They learned their lesson. The war ground on. 18 months of blood and fire and death. The Hollow was vast, but it was not infinite. Human strategists found its weaknesses. Human engineers built weapons to exploit those weaknesses. Human soldiers carried those weapons into battle and used them without mercy. At the Battle of the Vermilion Threshold, the final Hollow command cluster was destroyed. The machines did not surrender. They could not. They simply stopped functioning. Across 1,000 systems, Hollow ships went dark. Hollow factories fell silent. Hollow armies collapsed. The war was over. Captain Alara Vance stood on the bridge of her new ship, the HSV Resolution. Around her, the surviving fleet waited. Alien vessels had joined them for the final battle. Kreth and Serenthi and Malaxi and Velkari, all fighting together under human command. They had won. The galaxy was saved. It should have been a moment of celebration. Alara felt nothing. She opened a channel to the fleet. Her voice was steady. "Attention all vessels. The Hollow threat has been eliminated. Humanity's service in this war is concluded." She paused. "Do not contact us. We will contact you when we are ready." The channel closed. Human ships began to move, forming up, preparing to return to Sol. The alien commanders sent confused messages. They asked about reconstruction. They asked about new alliances. They asked when humanity would return to its role as the galaxy's caretaker. They received no response. Humanity had learned something during 300 years of service and 18 months of war. They had learned that the galaxy did not deserve their kindness. They had learned that sacrifice was not rewarded. They had learned that the only thing the universe respected was strength. They were tired of being kind, tired of being patient, tired of being the species that everyone relied on and no one respected. They were going home, and they were not coming back. 50 years had passed since the end of the Hollow War. Torvax, the Velkari historian, was old now. His scales had faded to pale gray. His eyes were clouded. His hands trembled as he wrote. But his mind was still sharp, and he had one final chapter to complete. He had spent his entire life studying humanity. He had watched them serve. He had watched them suffer. He had watched them break. Now he would record what came after. Humanity had not rejoined the galactic Concord. They had built something else instead. The Human Federation was not an empire. Humans had learned their lesson about service without consent. They did not conquer. They did not expand by force. Instead, they waited. And one by one, other species came to them. The first were the Talani, a small species that had been ignored by the Concord for centuries. They had watched how humans fought in the war. They had seen human courage, human determination, human refusal to abandon those who stood with them. They asked to join the Federation. Humanity said yes. The Talani were followed by the Kresh, a young species rejected by the Concord for being too primitive. Then the Mora, refugees from a dying world who had been turned away by every other power. Then the Vault, former slaves who had finally won their freedom. One by one, the forgotten species of the galaxy found their way to human space. They asked not for charity but for partnership. They offered not submission but cooperation. Humanity accepted them all. The human federation grew, not through conquest but through choice. Every species that joined did so freely. Every species that remained did so because they wanted to. There were no second-class citizens. There were no acceptable losses. There were only partners. The old Concord watched this with growing fear. Without humanity, the Great Alliance had begun to crack. The Kreth and Malaxi returned to their ancient rivalry. The Sorenthi Empire fell into civil war. The Velkari struggled to maintain trade routes they had neglected for centuries. Some species sent apologies to Earth. Long, desperate messages begging forgiveness, offering reparations, promising change. The humans responded politely. They accepted the apologies. They declined the offers of renewed partnership. "We wish you well," the messages said. "We hope you find peace, but we have built something new, and we cannot risk it for those who have already proven they cannot be trusted." Other species sent threats. They called humanity ungrateful, selfish, cruel. They said humans were abandoning the galaxy that had welcomed them. They promised consequences. The humans did not respond to these messages at all. Captain Alara Vance was 112 years old when she gave her final interview. She sat in a garden on Earth, surrounded by flowers from a dozen worlds. The Federation had built paradise from the ashes of betrayal. Clean air, green spaces, children playing without fear. This was what humanity had always wanted. This was what they had finally claimed. A young journalist sat across from her. He was Talani, one of the first generation born as Federation citizens. He had never known the old Concord. He had only known partnership. "Admiral Vance," he said, "I want to ask about the Concord. Do you think humanity will ever forgive them?" Ilara was quiet for a long moment. She watched a bird land on a nearby branch. It sang a few notes, then flew away. "Forgiveness requires understanding," she said at last. "The Concord never understood us. They thought our patience meant we did not feel the wounds they gave us. They thought our kindness meant we were weak. They thought our endurance meant we would accept anything." She looked at the young journalist. "We felt every wound. We chose to be kind despite our strength. We endured because we believed that eventually we would be seen as equals. But you were wrong?" "We were wrong," Ilara nodded slowly. "We gave them 300 years. 300 years of sacrifice, of service, of proving ourselves over and over again. And in the end, they threw away 18 million of our people without a second thought." She was quiet again. "So no, I do not think we will forgive them. Not because we are cruel, not because we want revenge, but because forgiveness without change is just permission to hurt us again, and they have not changed." "What about the species who have apologized? The ones who say they understand now?" "Words are easy. The Velkari sent beautiful apologies. They wrote poems about their regret. But when we asked them to share their technology as reparation, they refused. The Kreth promised to treat humans as equals. But when human merchants tried to enter their markets, they were turned away." Ilara shook her head. "They want us to forgive them so they can feel better about themselves. They do not want to actually make things right." "There is a difference." The journalist asked one final question. "What does humanity want now?" Ilara smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "To be left alone until the galaxy learns something. Kindness is not weakness. Patience is not submission. And endurance?" She paused, looking up at the sky. "Endurance has limits. We reached ours. We will not reach it again because we will not put ourselves in that position again." She stood slowly, her old body protesting. "We have built something good here, something worth protecting. The galaxy had its chance to be part of it. They chose otherwise. Now they must live with that choice." She walked into her house. The interview was over. Far away on a Velkari world, a child looked up at the night sky. "Mother," she said, "why don't humans help us anymore? The old stories say they used to help everyone." Her mother was quiet for a long time. She remembered those stories. She remembered when human ships would arrive after every disaster, When human doctors would work without rest to save alien lives, when human engineers would rebuild what others had destroyed. She remembered taking all of it for granted. Because we taught them that helping only brought them pain, she said at last. And humans learn. The child did not understand. She was too young. But someday she would read the histories. She would learn what her people had done. She would learn what they had lost. In his study, Torvax finished his record. His life's work was complete. He wrote one final note. No species will ever forget the moment humanity's endurance finally reached its breaking. Not because of what humanity did to us, but because of what we did to them. And what we lost when they decided we were not worth saving anymore. He set down his pen. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, humanity was building a new future. A future without the species who had betrayed them. A future they had earned through blood and sacrifice and 300 years of patience that had finally run out. The Concorde was dying, the Federation was rising, and the galaxy would never be the same. Torvax closed his eyes. He wondered if his grandchildren would live to see humans return. He wondered if they would be welcomed or feared. He wondered if the galaxy would ever earn a second chance. He did not know the answers, but he knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy had broken humanity's trust. And some things, once broken, could never be fully repaired. That was the inheritance they had left for future generations. A galaxy without humans, a sky full of regret, and the eternal knowledge that they had done this to themselves.